Tua Tagovailoa had some comments, and this is actually from last week, in which he was talking with the media and talking about his issues in Miami. And, his rookie season didn't go maybe as planned as many people thought, rookie growing pains and all that. But Tua spoke about not just his issues, but his issues with the playbook. This is from last week. This is what has gotten a lot of people to fire off the hot takes. Here was Tua.
I didn't actually know the playbook necessarily really, really good. And that's on no one else's fault, but my fault. Our play calls were simple when I was in. I didn't have alerts and checks, whereas now, feeling more comfortable, I can kind of maneuver my way, through these things now.
Again, I'm not. Listen, that is Roberto behind the scenes, who is very upset about what happened to his Lakers and Dodgers. He's the one making the sound effects and mocking Tua, who's going through some growing pains here. But it is each day. It's like another person discovers the sound, and another person reads the comments, and another person has a comment about Tua. And some of this might be that Justin Herbert was so good and Joe Burrow was before the injury, and that's who he's being compared to. But nonetheless, there is some concern from some people when it comes to Tua, Brady Quinn.
Yeah, and I think a bit too because, who he's going to be compared to, as you pointed out, Herbert, who really didn't have as much prep coming into the season. Burrow was prepared, even probably back during his meetings with the Bengals, through the draft process to be the guy, right? Like, they knew they were taking him. They were already introducing the playbook to him through meetings then. And as soon as he was drafted, it was his job right away week one. Herbert wasn't there week one as far as, starting. It was, Tyrod Taylor. And if not for him getting a punctured long week two, who knows when he would have went in. But nonetheless, he played fantastic, and both those guys set a really high bar for Tua. And the unfortunate thing for Tua is, it's not his own fault, but with the way last year went for Miami with COVID, how it impacted their season, it moved around their bye. Tua got thrusted into starting maybe even before he was ready, and it almost seemed as if they had made their minds up before the season to put Tua in and put him in around the bye week. Like, if you recall how that season was going for the Dolphins, they had just started to get some things back on track. They were a 3-3 football team. They built some momentum up, and then that was when they decided that, hey, we had this, bye week moved up. We want to now give Tua, a couple opportunities to go in there and play, a couple weeks to prepare to go in there and play. And I wouldn't say based on rookie standards he played bad. Like, he didn't statistically when you look at it. I think his transition to the NFL is going to take more than the other guys because of the way he plays. But the playbook stuff that he's admitting maybe leads to some other conversations of, okay, why can't Gailey leave? Their offensive coordinator's coached a lot of football. He seemed to just say, yeah, I don't want any more of this if this is the direction we're going, right? And so now they elevate George Godsey, Eric Studesville, two assistants who have been on their staff, but they get elevated to be co-coordinators. That's good for continuity for Tua. But I'm just curious as to what made Chan Gailey say, yeah, I'm good. I'm going to move on. He's seen a lot of football. Maybe he doesn't want to be a part of something where he feels like he's set up to fail. Nonetheless, it will be a big year for Tua, a huge year for Tua and the Dolphins. And I'm not just talking because they won 10 games last year. It's because they've got no closer. They've got no reliever. They can't bring Ryan Fitzpatrick in to try to settle games at the end of in the fourth quarter, a 2-minute drive. It's now just Tua. And if things don't go well this year, they've got the draft capital to draft another first-round quarterback high in 2022's draft. And so that's where it becomes such a pivotal, prove-it year for Tua Tagovailoa.
Yeah, I just, and we talked about it at the time. The handling of Tua by Brian Flores, I don't get it. I don't know how you expect him to get better if every time he deals with adversity, you yank him from a game. The game against Denver, he was on the road. It was against a tough Denver defense, and Tua was struggling. But to me, it's those moments when you can learn something. Like you can learn and kind of grow through. I think that in any walk of life, you go through it, you get thrown into the fire. That's where you learn the most out of from yourself and what's around you, and going through that experience. And he pulls him from the game. And then Ryan Fitzpatrick throws the interception to ice the game in the end zone, and the Dolphins lose. And then the game against the Raiders, he gets yanked again, national TV. If not for that Arden Key face mask, the Dolphins aren't winning that game. So they give credit like, oh, Flores, what a move. He knew his team better than anybody. Yeah, it's like, dude, it was like Arden Key literally turned Ryan Fitzpatrick into a Pez dispenser. And that's the only reason they had an opportunity to win that game. And then I had heard, if not for Ryan Fitzpatrick being out with COVID in Week 17 when the Dolphins were getting hammered, that they would have put him back in that game because Tua was struggling there as well. Like, I don't like I think there's a major concern. Just from, if I were Tua, I would not feel the greatest about things. And I don't know. These are a couple of comments, and maybe I'm just overthinking this. But so he talks about not really knowing the playbook. People think that that's a bad look. Then you remember he had a comment last year where he said something like, I thought it would be harder. He went through the first couple of games. He's like, I thought it'd be more difficult than this. I just wonder how that sits with people there. If they hear this stuff and they go, oh, man, like this is dude, like you don't get it yet. And maybe that's part of the reason why Brian Flores did what he did. Other than that, I can't figure it out. I don't know what the planning was. It just seems weird to me, the entire
Well, again, I think part of it got dealt to them. Part of it, they felt like, okay, if we're going to put it in, let's give him a couple opportunities to prepare for this couple weeks to get the game plan down, especially if he's having issues with it. So I think that was part of the thought process. And look, they wanted to play him. They wanted to see what they had. And even though maybe even admittedly now, he's basically saying, I didn't know the playbook that well. Like, I probably shouldn't have been the guy. It might make more sense, given that he's admitting it, that in a 2-minute drive, if you have to make adjustments or you have to operate efficiently, if he doesn't know the playbook well, it's probably better suited for someone like Ryan Fitzpatrick. So even though it wasn't in their best interest long-term, it kind of shed some light on maybe why Brian Flores was making the decision he was, or maybe even relying on Chan Gailey to say, hey, Chan, who do you want to go in and take this 2-minute series? Do you want it to be Ryan, or do you want Ryan to go in and operate in the fourth quarter? There's a lot of things that you go back and watch when it's a rookie on film, and you kind of come away being like, golly, man, we left so many plays out there. We missed reads, we missed checks. We're limited in what we can do. And that's, again, going back to what I said initially with Tua, he's going to have to change his game the most of all those players. Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, they're the guys drafted in his class because he was the guy that ran around a bunch and kind of had those off-script plays. And I'm not going to compare him to Johnny Manziel, but he's another example of a player who won a Heisman, was very successful in college. But when he got to the NFL, you're like, oh, that doesn't work. Yeah. And by the way, when you're undersized, which Tua, 6 foot, 215 pounds, who's been through a myriad of injuries, you're not going to last in the NFL that way, especially not with 17 games or 18 games as we see coming in the future. But like that's the reality of playing quarterback in the NFL. You have to learn to play from the pocket where you've got all these rules and things that protect you. That's what the most successful guys are able to do. And I don't know that he's there yet, but he's got as big of a year as any quarterback this season as far as his evaluation and as far as if he gets to year 3 and 4 without having another guy who's on his roster getting ready to compete or take his job. Like that's the scenario of Tua Tagovailoa, and it's completely different than Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert. Those guys both almost solidified themselves as early impression. They're getting a second contract, and they're only 1 year into this thing. Tua, on the other hand, might not even make it to the end of it as a Miami Dolphin. And that's the scary thing, I think, for him.
So back when Gary Kubiak was the coach of the Broncos, he came back after they won the Super Bowl. I think he coached one more season, and then he left, and cited health concerns and all that. And he had issues with health in the past. Yeah. And I thought, and this was just me, conspiracy theorist, when it comes to this stuff, because I think conspiracy theories are fun. All right, for people that get scared of conspiracy theories, grow a set of balls. All right, there's nothing wrong with thinking outside the box and having some fun. You don't have to believe them, but at least be entertained by the idea. All right, it's like fiction. You watch Game of Thrones. All right, this is that stuff is out there. All right, just have a good time and have a conversation. But my conspiracy theory was, I think Gary Kubiak looked at what the Broncos had at quarterback and decided, I'm going to go ahead and take a step back. And I'm going to go ahead and just, and any health concerns and all that stuff. He stayed with the Broncos, and then all of a sudden he ends up and he's coaching again in Minnesota. And it's like, well, right. you cited health concerns. I always felt like he was not happy with the quarterback situation after Peyton Manning decided to retire. Do you think Chan Gailey looked at this situation and looked at how it was handled last year and said, I'm done. I can't deal with this?
Potentially. I mean, the one difference I'd say between Chan Gailey and Gary Kubiak is, if I'm not mistaken, I think Chan Gailey is a bit older than him. I think he's almost 70. I could be wrong. I don't think Gary Kubiak is that old.
70 is the new 30, by the way, just so you know.
Right. Well, just to be exact, they're about 10 years apart. I believe Chan Gailey's 69. Gary Kubiak's 59, so they're about 10 years apart. I think at this point in time in Chan Gailey's probably coaching career and everything else, he's not going to step into a situation he's not going to feel comfortable with or he's not going to be on board with. And so to answer your question, yes, I think there was a huge piece of maybe how it was handled, but then moving forward, who was going to be the guy, how it was going to work. And he probably said to himself, yeah, I don't want to be a part of that. Like, I don't want to be a part of a make or break year kind of at that position. And maybe he didn't agree with how Brian Flores was seeing it. Maybe he wanted Fitz back. Who knows? But at the end of the day, in my mind, it had 100% to do with what the quarterback situation was last year, then moving into this year, as far as why he's not there any longer.